thank you everybody for coming as we continue our series celebrating Filipino American History Month. And today we are honored to welcome three amazing rock star artists that I deemed the Filipino Avengers of content. Apropos, and it makes sense. On a serious note, I will say that when I was coming up and trying to break into the industry, there weren't a lot of like visible like Filipino artists to look up to. But you know, when I kind of found everybody, when I found you all, I was so inspired and kind of like felt that representation. So thank you for representing for, you know, Filipino artists everywhere around the world with the amazing work that you've done, and will continue to put that there into the world. So I really appreciate it. And you guys are, speaking of like young, or I'm not young anymore, but like, you know, up and coming artists that are trying to get into the game. So thanks for representing, being visible, and then also just kind of like being like social media, like being visible. That's really important, you know, I think, of just kind of like showing people out there, like Filipinos out there, that, you know, if I did it, you could do it. So yeah, that's my spiel. And I'll get on with the introductions. Armand, do you want to kick it off, sir? Good sir?
Sure. Yeah, start from oldest to the youngest, right? So it's funny you mentioned the Filipino Avengers. So it's with the letter B, Avengers. That's
yeah.
what it's gonna be.
Yeah. Yep. Avengers.
That's good.
Well, thank you, Bobby. It's really an honor to be part of this group. So my name is Armand Serrano, guys. I work at Skydance Animation Studio, and I work with Bobby a while back at Disney. And so I've been in the animation business, gosh, I'm not gonna say probably for a long time. Probably most of you or at least you guys are probably, I don't know, maybe in elementary or high school at that time when I started. But anyway, yeah, it's fun and mabuhay.
Awesome.
Mabuhay.
Yep.
Mabuhay. Anthony, do you want to kick?
Am I the second oldest?
It's on the color in it. It's just a gray on the beard. Yeah, the most.
Oh yeah, I'm going off of grayness in the beard, and since Ricky doesn't have a beard,
I know.
I should.
I finally went through puberty.
Yeah, you don't have one yet.
Yeah, Ricky grew that like last week, right?
I grew it just for this thing. Yeah.
For this. Did you say you drew it?
Yeah. Actually, Ricky, that's one of those like Zoom filters, right? You don't actually have anything on your pit. You just have like a Zoom filter. Go ahead, Andy.
From the light, you know, that's going. I was just thinking about what you said earlier, Bobby, that now that there's more people are finding out more about other Filipinos in the industry, and you know, I found you through surfing on Instagram, and certain people I follow. I think I was following, I forgot who I was following, where I saw Rise Up Animation. Like, wow, that's so cool. And learning how long some of us have been in the industry, and how even back then I didn't really find a lot of Filipinos, which is weird. How is that happening? And part of it was, I was thinking maybe it's partly I know my fault was not wanting to talk about it, or not thinking it's important to talk about it. You know, about our successes, because, you know, we have to be humble, don't brag about stuff. It feels like bragging, but it's actually not. It's actually putting your mark so that no one else can take it. You know, if one part of it is even thinking that like the Dormalage or you know, designing Baby Groot. When I was saying that in the beginning, I couldn't really say it, and then I get, you know, teased like, oh, you keep on saying you designed Baby Groot. While I'm getting interviewed, I should say I designed Baby Groot every time the interview comes up, because people need to know. And in the beginning it's like, why I shouldn't, but then I realized this is why, because no one will know. Just like Larry Itliong, no one knows about him. I didn't know about him for a long time. And even some of the movies, he's barely mentioned how big his role was. It's very emotional to me when I watched that documentary about him. How you know, I know.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. Yeah, I could feel it.
Yeah, it's really
hard.
it's like
spilling out.
sad and angry
Right,
at the same time. So
Mhm.
it's like, you know what? I won't be shamed down to not say what Philippines accomplished, and I will keep on talking about it. You know, my accomplishment, you guys' accomplishments, you know, all the sorry, this is getting emotional for me. Just as it is kind of like wow. Anyway, I didn't talk about where I came from, but
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Anthony, you can keep going if you want. I'll move on to Ricky, like
Yeah.
close it out on introductions, and then that's yeah, you round out the introductions on the panel.
Well, I'm just glad to be here. Like, I'm truly honored to be part of this amazing group here. And, um, uh, you know, Armand, I don't know how long you've been in the industry, but I may be the oldest one here. I'm not sure. You know, Filipinos, beige don't age.
That's
No,
right.
Yeah,
no, but I've
that
been,
vampire blood.
Yeah. We all Filipinos look young, so we're actually all in our 70s to mid 80s.
Yeah,
So
close.
I'm not that old.
We've seen,
Yeah.
you know, the Great Depression.
The Manongs.
Yeah.
That's right. Rachel
The-
Lagana says,
Yeah.
Asian don't raisin. Asian don't raisin. But you know, Anthony, that's what you talked about just a second ago about like talking about your accolades and things that you've done. That was a thing that I was working through too, because my parents are like, be humble, you know, don't try to show off too much and stuff like that. And Ronnie Del Carmen and I really thought about that too, in terms of, you know, when we were in the industry, there was not a lot of Filipino representation. There was Ruben Aquino, you know, the animator from Disney.
Yeah.
And
Quick aside, Ruben Aquino, supervising animator of Ursula in Little Mermaid, Shang in Mulan, and much
Wow.
more. Go ahead, Ricky. Sorry.
thank you. No, that's always good to give context. And that's
Yeah,
another thing that I'm working on as I'm, you know, sharing is make sure you give people context. No, it's one of those things where, you know, a lot of people don't know these people the same way we do. So
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, it was this thing where it's like, yeah, I felt embarrassed too, or weird, because you're just like, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. And, but it did change when you realize that you want to inspire the next generation. And in the whole dynamic of your if someone like me can do it, you can do it too. And, you know, just like you're saying, our success is your success. And, you know, I love watching these panels, especially what Bobby and Rise Up Animation is doing, because there's so much representation now. There's so much excitement about all the different things that people are doing. And honestly, it's like, I love getting on these things because I want to know what everyone's doing and doing great things and getting inspired myself, frankly, you know. So just to talk about me. and, so, and I was at Pixar for 21 years. I was a production designer of Up and Monsters University, and I was art director of Finding Nemo. And then I was the character designer for Monsters Inc. And I was super lucky to get there in the early days. I started in '97 at Pixar. But before that, I was working in LA at Warner Brothers and Turner Feature Animation. And then before that, I went to Cal Arts. But it's one of those things where after I left Pixar, I took a trip to actually Armand, the Asian Asian Comic-Con. And Ronnie Del Carmen, who was at Pixar, amazing director, he told me, don't just go to Manila and then come back. Because I was actually transitioning out of Pixar, which was a big deal for me. It was a big life change. And he says, don't just go to Manila and then come back to the Bay Area. you need to find yourself. And, you know, because it was a big transition. It was scary, frankly.
Yeah.
And it was like, what am I doing? This is crazy. And he told me to go to Palawan, to go to El Nido. And I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I don't have a room. I don't have any, I haven't set anything up. And he goes, just find one, or you'll sleep on the beach. Just do it. And I'm like, okay, Kuya, I trust you. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I got on a flight to Palawan, and I've never been there before. And it was incredible. It was actually life-changing for me. And I went to this island called Matinlock Island, and I would swim and you know, do all this stuff. And then this guy who was at the resort, he goes, "Oh, Ricky, I see that you like to be active. Do you want to climb a cliff, a mountain?" And I was like, okay. And I decided to climb this cliff with him. And I'm telling you, it's crazy because there was no safety ropes. There was no, I was wearing like, I think I was just wearing Tevas at the time. But yeah, and the cliffs are made out of limestone, which is super sharp rocks, you know, sculpted by the rain and stuff like that. And as I'm going up this cliff, I'm realizing there's nothing more, you don't feel more alive the closer you are to death. It's like, if I fall off this thing, there's no hospital, there's no helicopter here. So I'm climbing.
No one's gonna know that you're dead.
I know. And I passed by this tree. And I was telling actually Bobby before the webinar came on. And it's gonna get to why I'm explaining the story. I'm climbing up with this guy, and I passed by this beautiful tree, and I asked him, "What kind of tree is this?" And he goes, "Oh, it's Ipil tree." And he goes, "People love this tree. It's respected. The wood, we want to use the wood to build our furniture in our homes, but it's protected, and it takes a really long time to grow." And I was like, this tree is incredible. And so as I'm climbing, I'm realizing I just can't get this tree out of my head. I realize, you know what, this is my next step, and that's going to be the name of my studio that I start. And it's called, and so I started a little company, which is just me. It's called Studio Ipil. And it's like not even, I mean, I haven't even done the website yet. So it's, but I'm developing Filipino stories along with doing freelance and things like that. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. And it was really from that moment, Armand, when I, you know, met you on that at that time, and it was crazy. It was really cool. So that's kind of, and then actually you're talking, Anthony, about Larry Itliong. So there's a book called Journey for Justice that was created, and the author, and it's published by Bridge and Delta Publishing, which is
what's the name?
Bridge and Delta, which is also headed by Gail Romasanta. And Gail and the author was Dr. Don Mabalan. And they created this children's book called Journey for Justice about the story of Larry Itliong. And I'm gonna tell you the same thing. I didn't know about him at all. And I actually knew, of course, we knew about Cesar Chavez and the labor movement. And, you know, even when I was at Pixar, I met Dolores Huerta, you know, and it's amazing because you see all the footage and you realize that Filipinos were relegated to the background. Yet we're finding out that Larry was one of the spearheads of getting to talking to Cesar Chavez about this, because he realized that, you know, up in Stockton, they were, or at Delano actually, that they were, you know, working so hard, and they wanted to strike for better pay and better, you know, treatment. And Larry Itliong was smart enough to go, if we, the Filipinos, strike, then they'll just hire more Mexicans. And so he had to go and talk to Cesar Chavez to make sure that they became a united front. And
Larry's
so
group was the first one that walked out.
That's right. It was actually, and Dolores Huerta even told me that when I met her at Pixar.
Wow.
And it was so empowering. And so Dr. Dhammabalan, who wrote the book, and this was actually her she's a PhD, and it was an amazing person. This was kind of her life work. And so she made this book and then unfortunately passed away in Hawaii. And so I'm actually working with Bridge and Delta to develop a book about Dr. Dhammabalan and her story. So we're just trying to showcase and tell and share more stories about the amazing things that Filipinos do. And so so that's kind of what's going on right now. Sorry, that was a long-winded thing.
No,
That's great.
Cool. Yeah, that's great,
that's
man.
great.
I mean, I would say really quickly, I hadn't been to the Philippines before 2019 in like 15 years. And then I went back to the Philippines for Icon Manila, which Armand put together. Yo, it was amazing. In 15 years, I hadn't been back since I was like a kid. And when you put that on, I went to Manila, I did Icon Manila, which is wonderful. And then I went to Palawan as well. And it like changed my life as well. And it like...
And remember, Bobby, we also climbed something because we saw each other.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So
accidentally, we went to Palawan, me and my family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
we saw on the spring.
Yeah.
Oh my
Armand's
gosh, really?
family was also going to Palawan.
And then, no way.
By happenstance, I saw them on a hike up that mountain in Coron.
We also climbed something. That's what
yeah. So
oh my God, there's something.
I got this bracelet from Coron, and that's where I saw Armand. I just saw it, like, I was like, what the hell are you guys doing here? And
you know what? There's something in the water over there. There's something in the mountain.
Awesome.
I haven't gone yet, but
you need to go. You're next, dude.
It was awesome.
Watching this. It's got the magic sauce. I'm telling you, there's something.
It's got the magic sauce, yeah. Palawan, it'll change your life.
Yeah, Palawan, it will change your life.
Man. Yeah, for sure. But that was awesome.
But see, we don't want to see. That's the thing. You don't want to tell too many people because you don't want too many people.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's
for
sure.
Yeah,
you gotta share it. It's amazing.
And then I will say this, like true to form, like Armand's whole family invited me to dinner that night, and in Palawan, and I was just like staying at a hotel by myself. And they're like, yeah, man, kind of come out. And then I went out and we all had dinner again. It was wonderful. So I didn't know anybody, but Armand's like, yes, please kind of come out for dinner. We had dinner at this like small town in the Philippines on an island. So,
but the crabs are this big and the lobsters are this big. Seriously, right? When we were looking at it, it's like,
yeah,
this is the first time I've seen, those crustaceans that big. So, but yeah, it was a fun time. We also climbed a place like what Bobby said. It's not limestone. It's not a cliff. How many steps was it? 700 steps,
geez.
right? Yeah, something I can't remember. Well, how high that was.
Wow.
But I could fly to the Philippines and stay there for 2 weeks quarantine. Right? You know how they have to quarantine you when you go?
That's the place to be quarantined.
That's the place to be quarantined.
That's the place to be,
Yeah.
But talking about the stairs, I remember when we were going up the stairs, I mean, it's so hard, but you can buy ice drops. You can buy some popsicles along the way. So.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Smart.
Only in the Philippines.
Well, I got to tell you, that place is, who have not been there, it's so beautiful. It's what movies put in as their paradise. Like they shot Born Identity and it's like, oh, I went to paradise. And it's like they use that scenery. It's amazing. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And as artists and visual people, it's so inspiring. Just every single thing you see, it's just gorgeous. Yeah. It's amazing.
I will say, okay, so I will say to interject a little bit to get into like the panel a bit, if you guys don't mind. I mean, we could do this for
we can just talk about Palawan the whole
but I will say conversation, we're talking about designing for movies, right? So I wanted to get
I forgot the topic.
Oh yeah. You forget this is not just like a Zoom call that we're
bring out the mahjong. I don't play mahjong, but
I wanted to ask like really quickly because it's different for everybody. We can go around the room. I'll start with Ricky. What movies, 2 or 3, what movies inspired you to become an artist?
It's a good question.
Don't talk about the
Well,
long one anymore.
No, I want to tell you
Just
one of the movies, so animation wise, one of my favorite. Well, okay, when I was a kid, I would love watching animation. I love watching cartoons. So I'd run home from school and watch cartoons, and I'd watch, Warner Brothers cartoons or just whatever was on.
Looney Tunes.
Yeah, the Looney Tunes.
Yeah, man.
And there were, those were the things that were kind of a big part of my life. And then my best friend and I, we would watch, Gotcha Man or not Battlestar Galactica.
Voltus
Sorry.
5.
Yeah, Voltus 5. Thanks. All that stuff. And the anime, that was the introduction to anime for me, all that. And then Dumbo was a major film in terms of feature film because it just stuck with me. And then, but in terms of me wanting to get into the film business, actually, when I was in 4th grade, it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. I went and I watched that as a kid. I think I was 8 years old, and my face melted like in that movie. I was like, I want to do this too. How do you do that? I want to make this, something like that.
Wow.
So that's kind of some of the stuff that influenced me.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's awesome.
I think
because you coughed, Anthony. Do you want to go next?
That means don't cough.
I think one of the strongest memories I had that made me want to do go into film, because the first kind of job I started with was creature design. I wanted to actually be a horror director. That's what I wanted. But one of the first things I've seen is Harryhausen's animations for Jason the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans, Sinbad, the Tales of Sinbad. Those were the ones that I was like, wow, how are these things moving? And then I think I watched a special features on it or something. So that was the beginning. But again, I didn't know about jobs in the industry, artist jobs that are there for this. And Star Wars, I think, was one of the first ones that I've seen behind the scenes of the ads walking, right? You're like, it's amazing. Animation wise, I think back then I wasn't really a Disney fan. I was like Mazinger Z,
Voltus 5. It's okay, you're not sponsoring this panel.
Yeah, until I think it's all good. I think until Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, I got kind of back into it. But by that time, I was still into anime and all these other shows, but mainly Star Wars, I think, and Ray Harryhausen, Exorcist, every horror film.
Exorcist. Wait, you said Disney, Ray Harryhausen, and then you dropped The Exorcist?
The Exorcist.
I don't think that falls into any category, bro. I think that's its own thing. So,
okay, guys.
Awesome. Okay, I won't even listen. There's no judgment here. The Exorcist. Probably that Catholic bit.
That movie scares me so much.
I can't watch it.
When you watch it now, it doesn't hold up.
It does hold up.
I don't want to even watch it. I'm so scared of it.
Yeah. It doesn't hold up. I watched it again recently. I was ready to how I used to be scared.
Anthony has it on loop. That's how.
That's why.
The funny thing is, you just reminded me of when I was first started working in special effects, right? And I would love looking through this site called Rotten.com. And
I remember Rotten.com.
Yeah, it's amazing for reference. Jeez. Dead bodies, just like I'm eating my lunch. It's like, because I have no time to draw. So on break, I have to be like searching for reference. And people around me are like, how are you able to eat through? I don't know. It doesn't look real to me. It just looks like reference. But But I have to say though, now it's harder for me to look at that. I don't know why. That just changed, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I have kids
I can
now.
understand that. Yeah.
You got
Armand,
smart.
Armand, you also got into animation because of The Exorcist, right?
Yeah, partly in that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, actually, honestly, I cannot watch that in its
Ridiculous.
entirety even before. This is the time, when Betamax was still in existence, and I would
Yeah,
watch
beta.
it, and I cannot finish it. It has to be always. I don't even remember if I finished the movie, but there's always attempts for me to watch that.
Don't watch
No, I
it.
started.
It's classic.
Maybe if I'm
That's
eating
so
like what
funny.
Anthony's doing, maybe that's the thing.
Oh,
No,
man.
I never intended to be in animation. To tell you honestly, growing up in the 70s and 80s in Manila, you would never expect that there's an opportunity for that kind of job. So growing up, I mean, I've been drawing all my life, and I think I want to go for fine arts or actually or music. Those are the two things that I used to do a lot when I was a kid.
Mm,
I thought actually I almost went into music.
mm.
Then my dad just you know suggested to if I want to change my mind.
Sure.
So yeah, so I said I want to do fine arts, and and again, so he said, maybe you want to reconsider that. You can find a real
Yeah.
job. If you don't, you won't end up. Those are more like hobbies. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so I took something different in college. Actually, Anthony and I, we went to the same university. Hey, for those of you who are watching from UST, we went to UST.
UST.
Ronan del
Is there
Carmen,
a signed
yeah,
UST?
Anthony Francisco, myself, yeah, and then there's a bunch of other guys.
Heavy hitters, heavy
We
hitters.
should come back to UST and do like a
I know there's,
Avengers.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's something in that school. But after college, so actually I took engineering, and it took me a long time to finish it. So I thought, even in college, I never thought that I'm gonna end up in a drawing career, right? So I draw a lot. I would draw my teachers and everybody. And but I think the question was what movie, right? So at that time, my first, I'm trying to remember the topic. My first introduction to that it can be a career was actually Star Wars when I was 10 years old when I saw it. And then I saw the making of, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. Actually, the the
Yeah.
stop motion animation, that's the one that really sparked my interest
You
in
saw that in the
animated
theater? You saw Star Wars in the theaters.
in the theaters. Yeah,
Wow.
the
Wow.
first one, yeah, in Manila, with
In
my mom
Manila. Wow.
in Manila. Then my oldest brother, he's also an artist, and we will watch those making, and yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark, everything
Yeah.
that George Lucas
Yes,
made,
yeah.
Spielberg. So anything that involved stop motion or visual effects or green, matte painting and green screen, that kind of stuff
Yeah.
interested me. But when I was in college, after college, I had to find a job, and I tried to do engineering, and it bored me to death. I was an apprentice engineer for a month. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. I brought my sketchbook with me that made me survive.
Which
But
one
I
was your
learned about
favorite
that there's
Star Wars, by the
animation.
way? Armand,
uh,
which was your favorite? Star Wars Emperor Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi?
4, 5, 6. Those are my favorite. Actually, 4 and 5. Those are my favorite all time. Between the two, probably Empire would be my most
Empire.
favorite of
Yeah, me
all.
too. Empire.
Yeah.
Then I did like 1, 2, 3, but when 7, 8, 9 came out, I like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and
Oh, I'm still 4, 5, 6.
yeah. So
Empire
yeah,
still.
but Empire is still the best one.
Yeah, the
No,
best.
so after college, I mean, my wife, we were dating then at the time, and she has a classmate whose sister was working in animation in the Philippines, outsourced a Hanna Barbera studio, and that's my introduction to animation. So I applied, and I was, after deliberation for 6 months, because they have batches in hiring, so it took me 6 more months to be hired, and I started as an in-betweener. Then I moved to layout. Then I moved to concept art. So I stayed in TV animation in the Philippines for 6 years before I moved to the US.
Hmm.
Then I
What
got hired
shows
at
did you work
Disney.
on at for Hanna-Barbera, Armand?
The first 3 years I was working for Hanna-Barbera. I worked on Captain Planet and the Planeteers, Yo Yogi, um, a rehash of wacky races. It's called
Oh,
Fender
wow.
Benders.
Yeah.
Then we did some stuff also for Warner Brothers. It was odd, I did some Tom and Jerry Kids. Even at Disney, I did some Winnie the Pooh, um, a TV series. Then I moved to Marvel TV. I supervised layout, and it was for X-Men and Fantastic Four TV series.
That's pretty.
Um,
Awesome, man.
That's pretty
I
rad.
only
yeah.
I
So
only asked because I cut my teeth at Hanna-Barbera too, but it was Turner feature, and
yeah.
then across the street was Hanna-Barbera, and then I had friends there from
hmm
school that were making the shows. So
That was in Cahuenga, right? The time I
yeah,
think.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was the
old place.
yeah. So a lot of union guys, American animators, they would go to the Philippines and train us. So I met a number of American and European artists, and those are the guys that actually encouraged me to, why don't you go to the US? Why don't you go to the US? So that's what I did. I applied in 30 studios in the US, and I said the first one to to bite the bait, I'll be there. And so I started with the game studio in Glendale in '96 when I moved here, and as soon as I got here,
Yeah.
I took a class in associates in art. This is pre-online, guys. There's no online at that time. The first trade school in animation run by the union, and my instructor was Paul Felix and Jim Schlenker. So they kind of helped me out in building a portfolio. So right after 13 weeks of a little amount of sleep, I rebuilt my portfolio when I was taking their class, and I got hired at Disney right after. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
So that's
Yeah.
that's my introduction in animation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a great segue too, of just kind of like Armand, of like I'm glad you touched on that too, of like a lot of the community is like, how do I break into the industry? What steps can I take to break into the industry? So like if really quickly, if we can kind of go around of like, like rewind back to young students, Anthony, Armand, Ricky, and having this dream and trying to break into the industry. What sort of advice would you give to people that want to do what you do, and kind of what's the path that you would recommend to getting there, right? Because we want. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna say something. I'm
Okay.
just,
Yeah,
I just say.
No, you touch on it. But like with Ricky, I mean, like once you realize that you wanted to be an artist, man, and then like what were the steps that you took to get there? Like you're like, I want to work in animation, whether it's Pixar or not, or Disney or not. Like, what are the kind of like logical steps that you're like kind of took to get there, you think?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I actually just there wasn't a lot of resources. I had to go. There was no internet. The
Yeah.
internet's amazing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best thing, but it's the worst thing as well. But I actually you hear the same stories like what Armand was saying. I just drew all the time. I don't draw as well as Anthony or Armand, but the thing is that you have to constantly work on your craft, and you constantly have to just keep drawing and drawing and drawing. That's the advice I always give to young people or anyone who wants to get, like, how do I get into this animation, or how do I get better? It's like you have to keep drawing and drawing, and that's how you communicate. But when I was a kid, I actually created flip books, and no one told me to do that. I actually just did drawings on the side of my pages of my book, and then I found a flip like a notebook, and I made flip books. I actually have them somewhere, but I just drew, and then I went to the local library in San Diego. I grew up in San Diego, and I went to Paradise Hills Library, and I found a book on animation. It wasn't Illusion of Life. That was the Bible of animation for me. But I found that this Preston Blair book, How to Do Animation,
Yeah,
and then I
that's
took
good.
that home and I just drew. I just copied it and just studied it and copied it. And then, you know, it's this funny thing where the school I went to in San Diego, I went to Bell Junior High School and Morris High School in San Diego. And from those schools came some really amazing animation people. There's Bobby Rubio. I went to school with Bobby Rubio in junior high school and high school.
It's not me,
And then I
guys.
went to, what was that?
It's not me.
But not
I tell you,
the other,
like,
the other
I go
Bobby.
to I go to a lot of Filipino get-togethers, and they're like, "Yo, I loved,
Hello.
oh, I loved it,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Cool, thanks."
Well, you know what? That's not bad compared to you. Because I get mistaken for Ronnie Del Carbon, and I'm like, I work it. I'm all, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's-
I'm looking for it. I tell Bobby that story all the time, but go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, but so, the thing is that it's I just did it myself. No one kind of told me. And I
Yeah,
think that's the kind of thing. It's like have a drive, have a passion, because the industry's tough. It's a
Yeah.
tough place to be, and
Mhm.
you know, it's not going to be given to you. You got to work for it. It's
Mhm.
not going to be handed to you. And everyone has their journeys. You know,
Mhm.
listening to Anthony and Armand's stories. I haven't heard Anthony's story yet, but of how you kind of get in on the ground level, and then we're so lucky to have this, success or this luck and timing. It's a luck and timing, but it's this thing where, you just, Filipinos are known to work hard, but it's a deeper thing of this love for what you want to do and this love to, I want to tell stories, or I want to do something different. And it's funny because when I watched these Looney Tune cartoons when I was a kid, there were certain ones that I really gravitated towards. And so the ones that I gravitated towards were the ones that were production or art directed by Maurice Noble. And it was these ones that Chuck Jones would direct, but then Maurice Noble would design. And I just loved the look of that. And then when I went to Cal Arts, I ended up meeting Maurice, and then Maurice took me under his wing and a bunch of other people. And so it was super lucky. It was, again, just
man.
really, really lucky.
Wow.
Just like this, just like tonight, like hanging out with these guys. But it's one of these things where, I don't know, it's like no one pushed me. It was more me pushing myself to want to do it. And I still do it to this day. Like I mean, I'm looking at people's work online and I get so inspired. And then I also get, and this is truthful, like I've been in the industry for a long time. I get depressed, like I suck. Oh my God. But then I realize, wait a second, I can't do that to myself, because that's not making me go forward. You have to put that aside and say, well, then I'm me too. I'm my own style, and I have to do, put my thing out there. And that's once that clicks in, it hits me to go, okay, this is my opportunity to do something cool. And if I stumble, that's all part of the process, and it's natural to, most of the time I'm super inspired, and it's like, that's the whole thing about sharing. And I'm going to admit too, I'm very bad about sharing. I'm not really on Instagram, or I have an account, but I'm not on Facebook or Meta now. I'm not doing that as much, because something happened in my past that made me not like social media. And it was this thing where Facebook just started, and someone tried to make it was like a fake account of me. And I'm like, what? Because my cousins were like, finally you're on Facebook. And I'm like, I'm not on Facebook. And then someone made an account pretending to be me. And then they put pictures of me and all that stuff. And I was like, who the hell? And it just weirded me out massively.
Weird.
And so it basically turned me off.
Whoa.
And so so after I left Pixar, I realized the power of like social media. And then that's why I started the one after Pixar.
Yeah.
But then I just don't really go on as much.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to do it. I'm so old. I'm a dinosaur. I'm still learning how to do it. So anyway, that's a long-winded story, but it's really for the young people out there, just have the passion and the work ethic, but it's really a journey. And the journey I'll speak for myself, is still happening. And it's exciting because I'm on another chapter of my journey. So.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Well done.
Oh, yeah. I think I relate to that, like what you're saying, that during that time when you were finding how to get in, there was no connections, nobody you knew, and just trying to figure stuff out. Even the other people you have the journey with, everyone seems to be more like, oh, I don't want to share how I got in there, or it felt like that in the beginning. So it's I try to change. There's a really good friend of mine, Kevin Chen. I think he showed me a really good example of how good person an artist would be like, by really trying to help more than think that this one connection's mine and I'm not gonna share it with anybody. There was that feeling. I don't know why I'm telling this story. I guess you just remind me back in the past.
This is a therapy session. There's no one else on this call. It's just
there's no one else.
It's just us four. I promise you. Like I told you, there's no one
there's
else on this
us
call.
four.
It's
Who
just
else
us.
is here? Oh, just 66 people. That's all.
Yeah. It's not. No, there's nobody. No, that's an ad. That's an ad.
But everyone out there, I'm sure you guys feel that way when it's that kind of challenging, where everybody thinks they're out to beat each other, but they don't realize when you work together, it actually gets you further faster. And even after my career's been 10 years in or 15 years in, I've noticed that it is better when I help other people. And the reason I say this, because a lot of people, how did you get this job? How did you get that job? What happened was I started teaching what I know. And the people I taught, I taught with Kevin, right? Kevin Chen, it's really his class. I taught character design with. And when I taught with him, we happened to have taught some people that became the head of visual development at Marvel Studios, and they got to all these places. And that's how you get connections in the industry, because you actually go out to try to help people, and part of that too is part of that too is being, it's all back to empathy, I guess. It just feels like that. Like once I didn't realize that's why I got lucky with knowing people here, people there. Oh, you seems like you know everyone. And I don't really know everyone, but I knew the people in my class that I was able to teach, and they became better artists, and they got the connections. And they got connections, and those got connections. So it's almost like the percentage just gets bigger. That's why I like doing stuff like this too. Now I know Ricky, and of course, Bobby, I know you for a while already too, and Armand, but those are other more connections that you have. Even though if you don't ever really work with each other, it gives you this inspiration, to keep on moving forward and hearing these stories.
Right.
That's one side of getting networking, but the other part is you got to be honest with yourself and meet the people you get along with, not because he has a connection there, and then then you become friends with them. Yeah, don't be like that. Be with people you actually enjoy being with. So when they do get the connection, or you guys connect together, it's more of a genuine partnership, right? And lastly, I think I could say that one other way, like actionable, what do you call, steps. Look at your favorite show, watch the credits, look for the smallest company, and then apply it to there.
That's great advice. Yeah.
That's so
awesome.
And then you build your resume that way, and then you meet more people, taking classes, being a student of the game all the time, right?
Is that what you did?
Yes, that's what I did. I
looked at credits.
I looked for the smallest company, and then get rejected many times.
Me too.
And took classes, and the luckiest thing that happened to me was I took a class in this school called Associates in Art, and they had a bunch of professionals teaching there, bunch of Disney people and DreamWorks painters and animators. I even Vilpu was teaching there.
Was it
Oh,
Armand?
you
Was
had-
Armand?
Yeah.
Was Armand teaching there?
Armand, were you teaching it?
No, I was a student there. That's the school I went to.
You went to
Oh, man.
That's the predecessor of all trade schools that we
All-
have right now. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
why Paul Felix was my instructor.
Paul Felix.
But yeah, I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a bunch of. I took only one class
Yeah.
from that
I paid
school,
for
but
one class. I snuck it all. No, just kidding. No.
yeah, I think in my class, I didn't know them yet at the time, but when we were just chatting about it, just recently or a few years ago, when looking back, I just found out that me, Steven Silver, and Paul Wee were actually in the same class.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
I know Paul
we
Wee.
didn't we didn't know each other then, but when we were chatting
you
about
know.
it, what year was that? What was the class? What
Yeah.
season? Because it's always I think it depends on the season, what term. So yeah, it's fun.
It
It's a good school.
It was Mark Westermo that did
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
he did movie posters, and when I met him and he started introducing all these Muka art classic artists, I guess, or
Yeah.
master
Uh-huh.
artists, Sargent, and Jean Leon Jerome, and all these kind of painters, and I know about Rockwell already, but I didn't know more about him, and Leyendecker. So that this was really the great education for me that
Right.
I went through. And in my mind, I was like, I want to paint my creatures like these painters, so that was kind of what I was trying to blend. But I was going to finish off my story by saying when I went there, I met Jordu. Jordu was doing a class there, and I saw him just sculpted this creature in 2 hours with wet clay. I was just amazed. I was like, wow, and you're a creature designer. There's such a job as creature designer in the industry. I didn't know that. And then when he opened his school, I visited it, and I was there, and I got introduced. Well, Alec Gillis, the owner of ADI, was there in that open house. And then I got to talk. I was trying to talk to him. Carlo, my other friend, Carlo Aureliano, was in front of me, but he's a big guy. So he was the one talking. He's a little bit more braver than I am. So I'm behind him, and I'm thinking, when, should I, it's so hard for me to come in to talk. But what I liked about Alec, which I keep as part of me now, is now when I see someone behind people, I'll just ask them, hey, did you want to talk? Yeah, because I don't want. So he was so nice. He said, are you an artist too? And I go, yes, I'm an artist too. And he brings me up, do you have a portfolio? And I didn't have one, right? And then I think I remember now, Carla, no, you have one. And I go, what? I do. Yes, you have one. Tell him it's at Art Center. And I go, I don't. Oh, I see what you're trying to do. Yes. And then that. And I started just drawing. So 2 weeks from that time, I had to show my portfolio, and then I just drew all day, until I put something together. And then when I finally had the day of the meeting, I didn't get a call, and I thought, oh, this sucks. They don't like me anymore. They don't want me to be there. And then I just tried to make sure I fought that false narrative in my heart and just still gave them a call. And it's good I did that, because then they were like, oh no, come after a week, we're really busy, but come after a week. So I was able to push myself to do that, and luckily I did that, because when I went to present my portfolio, when Alec was looking through it, he was like, not impressed. And I was like, oh, so worried. And then he asked for my sketchbook, and I think that's when I'm glad he still gave me another chance and looked at my sketchbook. And he saw I had so many other studies there, designs and stuff. And that's how he hired me on the spot, because I had good ideas.
That is key about having a sketchbook. A lot of younger artists ask me, how do I get in, and having a sketchbook with your ideas, and you're constantly practicing. When I got into Turner, and I had all this artwork from Cal Arts and all that stuff, but it was the last page where I just had a bunch of thoughts and ideas in a sketchy form. That was the one they were more interested in. And it's totally right. It's about the ideas.
Mm.
It's of how you can communicate those ideas and how unique those ideas are,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to constantly hone your craft over
Mm-hmm.
time, but it's the idea thing, it's the ideation, it's the way you think is
Yeah,
what's important and what we look for when we're looking for artists,
that is.
you know.
Actually, to piggyback right on what you guys are talking about, that's actually one of my answers to one of the questions. What to look for, or what's one thing that's been missing. Well, he said students' portfolio. Actually, not only students, in a lot of portfolio that I've seen through the years. The one thing that's missing is the ability to tell a story.
Mm.
And we are concept artists. And what's the main thing that's missing in concept artist portfolio? Everybody, everybody are good. They're all good painters, but they're conceptless concept art. Um, you go to art station and you look at artworks and amazing. If I need to hire a painter or a draftsman or women, there's always of them out there who can actually render and who can paint. But where the rubber meets the road, that's when you get hired for your skills. But the one thing that will make a studio keep you for a long period of time or renew your contract or for another project is what you can bring into the table. Not just your skill to draw and paint, but the ability to how to digest a story, how to tell that story, how to have an idea, how to ideate an idea. It's all about ideas. It's not just about the skills. So
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's has to be strengthened in schools. Is how to use composition the right way. It's like music. Composition is
Yep,
music too, right?
right.
Mm.
So, or chemistry, make
Hmm.
chemical composition, H2O, you get two
Preach,
hydrogen.
Armand,
Wow.
preach.
I'll preach it, man. This is the
Hallelujah.
gospel of concept
No,
art.
this is it. It's
No, this is,
Definitely.
I mean, if you have H2O and you just take one molecule of hydrogen and it's not H2O anymore, it could be poison already. So the intent, the idea, you started with water, but you take one composition, tiny composition. It could be your lighting. It could be a change in your especially perspective. Oh, I want to do it an upshot. Okay, you just change the story. You just change an idea. So when we compose, a music can be ominous by changing this one note from a white key to a black key. You change it to something happy or something that's totally different in emotion. In composition, in artwork, when we're creating so-called concept art, a lot of artists, they don't know that what composition means, that you're trying to tell the story. I think the artists are always trying to look at it from their point of view, but they never look at it at their storytellers from the point of view of the audience. So as an artist, to be effective, always put yourself in the audience perspective. And if you're seeing the artwork for the first time, honestly, are you getting your own story or not? It means there's something wrong in your composition that people are not getting. So anyway, this is gonna be a
Mm.
long conversation.
No, that's
But
yo,
I just
that's
need to
fantastic.
drop it because it
Composition.
was asked on the question. You guys are open to it. I think it's
Yeah.
something that is so important because we're
That,
concept artists and the concept is missing.
and one thing people have to remember too in their portfolios is a concept artist solves problems. We're not just
Mm-hmm.
painters. We solve the problems visually, right? So if you using all those techniques, especially what Armand is talking about, composition, all this stuff, that is going to be utilized properly if you know what the problem you're solving. If you don't know the script, you don't know the story, then you won't know what you're solving. So in your sketchbooks, in your portfolios, you should look like you're solving. Oh, how does a garbage truck travel in space if it's during this time, or underwater? How does something look like it could survive underwater with all the whatever kind of design elements it has, their gills or whatever, or in space. So yeah, it's the same thing. It just, to piggyback off what Armand is saying, just that adds depth to your portfolio.
Mhm.
Yeah, even bigger ideas. Sorry, I have to share this one. Even bigger ideas, like I remember in Infinity War where Thanos versus Doctor Strange, and Thanos brings down the moon down on Doctor Strange and Iron Man, right? That note was given to me. They just said, I want an epic battle between Thanos and Doctor Strange, and that was it. And then I had to think of, what am I gonna do? Epic, where is it? Are we just fighting down here? And I was thinking, are we just fighting down here? No, he has a gauntlet. He has 4 gems, or 3 or 2. Which gems? And then what do those gems do? Reality. And then okay, we're out in space. I'll take the black hole and the sun together and use the black hole gravitational pull to pull the fire out of the sun, stuff like that. So it's like, how big can you get? Anyway, that's
Actually, that's a really good example that you gave, Anthony.
Yeah.
As a concept designer in the industry, people would always ask, how can I start? How do I start? The first thing that you need to start is, you have to know what the needs versus what you want. The needs are, these are the non-negotiable stuff. Coming from the director, coming from the script, like what you said, the only need that you need to give them is epic battle.
yeah.
The rest were not stated in the script. So that's the time you can give what you want. That's what you get hired for. So you give them what you want, what you think is appropriate for that epic battle, and you did your thing, and it was successful.
Yeah.
And
We
it
are
could be
lucky with
any
that.
other a thousand possibilities that you could have given them, but you pick this one because you trust your gut feel to it, and that's your idea. And so yeah, in visual development and concept art, it's all about paying attention to what the needs are. If the needs are specified on the script, it's happening in Moscow at this time of the day, and this is the epic battle. They brought all the arsenal. If they're all laid out, then you as an artist, you have to do research, you have to
Right.
focus everything on that, and you have to give what they need. Don't I think an artist, they got so excited that they started giving what they want right away. And what you want, we didn't think what you want yet. Give us what we need first, and the rest you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I think that you have to, just like my kids, when they want to, hey dad, can I buy this? Do you really need it, or do you just want it? It saves you a lot of money.
Can I have $20? What are you
Well,
gonna do with $10? Here's $5.
Armand, you and Anthony, you guys hit upon an amazing thing, because at the level that we do stuff right now with our work, it's time is money, and the director is trying to get this. It's like epic battle, that's it, and you're like, what? But then there are all of this information that is given to you, and in an experience they will go unnamed to protect the innocent. But the artists, they have their point of view, and they want to showcase these ideas.
Yeah.
That's great, but make sure you hit the first thing first.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of times this artist, they would, okay, so Brad Bird is a very strong director.
He's dropping names now.
I'm dropping the names. And he's like, I want a square, right? I'm just going to use an example. I won't go into specifics, because I just don't want to be mean about this artist. So Brad's, I want a square. And then the artist gave him a circle. And he's like, that's great, but I want a square. And then the next time, the artist gave him a rounded off square. And he's like, I want a square. And it's like he's constantly, this artist
This is the right answer.
Trying to, and the thing is, Brad understood that because he's an artist as well, but there's a point where it's like, I get what you're trying to do, but that's not what we need right now.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be, because
it is.
He also didn't sell it very well. And that's another dynamic of being a concept artist and being a person with ideas. Give them what they need, but then give them other options that may be better. And if you don't sell it right, or if it's not the right thing, then you move on, but it's this thing what Armand was saying. It's like, there's these parameters, and you got to work with them, because it's time. It's like you're not given a lot of time for stuff. You're not given, and but then there's also a trust aspect. If you don't give the director what he or she needs, then they start going, well, they're just going to keep giving me the thing that I'm not wanting at this point, and it starts getting really tenuous. So
the number one rule in visual development and production design is it's not my movie. I always,
Right.
you know, you have to always remember that it's not my movie. It's not my movie. It's the director's vision. That my job is to extract that vision from his head and make it come to life. So yeah, that's a really good example. And you can tell us who that guy is after the session.
Do you guys does the
Bobby
panel
Pontillas.
does the panel what'd you say?
It was Bobby.
It's okay, Bobby. It's another.
That was
Bobby.
me.
It's not,
It's another Bobby.
No,
It's
I'm
not Bobby.
kidding. I'm kidding.
I gave him a square, and I just wanted to give him a square because like lumpia, you,
well, lumpia is square in the side, but
that's true too. That's true too. Do you guys think that that's a skill that what you just talked about, Ricky, that you can start to develop even in school? And then how?
Oh yeah, it starts with listening. You know, you're part of a team, and you just have to be a good listener, and you have to take in that information. Again, that's why portfolios. Look, we look at portfolios all the time, and that's another thing. The reality is, when I was at Pixar, I would look at portfolios for the art department, and our day is so packed. We go in there, and it already went through the gauntlet of other people before it got to the production designers. And we had X amount of time to go through it. And people were going through like this. And I remember going, oh my God, people work so hard. I remember when I did my portfolio, I worked so hard. But it's this thing where you're looking, you're mining for the way that the person thinks. Just like Armand was saying, you're entertained by it. It's like music. It's literally like when you go to iTunes Music or whatever, and you listen to the first couple of seconds, you're like, I don't want to listen to that. You go to the next one. Or that's not the song I'm looking for. And that's not to say, oh, this musician is not good. It's just a certain thing that you are looking for.
It's
at
not
the
right
time.
for that time.
Yeah.
That's
but
usually,
you know, it's kind of an interesting thing, because when I look at portfolios, there's times where it starts off really strong, and then you go in and it kind of gets weak, and then then it ends with a really strong image or something, and then you're like, huh, that's interesting, this person has something there. And then you kind of set that aside. There's other ones that are just beautifully, the draftsmanship is amazing, but as Armand was saying, the ideas aren't there, or the storytelling isn't there. And then there's others that the storytelling's there, but the draftsmanship is not there. And then so what are you looking for at this particular moment? So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But honestly, like I haven't, the thing about young artists is that we all know we're developing. Even for veteran artists, we're still developing. But then are you able to, this is a big thing, are you able to communicate those ideas? Because there's great ideas, but if you're not able to communicate them like with clear drawings or clear illustrations, then it's a little tougher, especially for concept art. So life drawing is an important thing, because life drawing is a skill that's like a foundation. And Anthony, you talked about Glenn Vilppu. What a tiny in world. That was my life drawing teacher at Cal Arts.
Oh, wow.
So Glenn Vilppu, I mean, he's touched everybody. And then so you have a Glenn Vilppu school of thinking of life drawing, and it's very fine art and very traditional. And then I had an artist named Cornelius Cole, that was like amazing artist, but he wasn't so structured as Glenn Vilppu. He was like, draw with if you're getting frustrated, and this is actually some good advice to share. If you're getting frustrated with your drawing and you're right-handed, draw with your left hand. And then I'm like, what? And then he goes, yeah, and better yet, go outside, go find a stick, take your pencil, tie it to the end of the stick, and then draw it with your foot. And I'm like, what? And I learned that over because now, I was like learning. I'm going, what the hell is this crazy guy talking about?
Yeah,
But what he was talking about was getting out of that
Yeah.
mindset
I see.
Yeah.
and getting
Like
into a
that
weirder
funk.
zone because you're using different brain functions. And
Yeah.
so it's a fascinating thing,
Can I ask a really quick question, and not just for me? Sorry, Ricky, cut you off, but
That's okay.
I'll get you started on this. But like, it's not for me, but or also would like to know it. But like, I get a lot of questions on like what studios like Skydance, like a Marvel, like a Pixar are looking for in terms of character design. So let's get specific for like a couple minutes of like character designer. What are you looking for like in their portfolio? What speaks to you when you're looking at this portfolio? Ricky, do you want to kick that off? We can go around the room. We get a lot of character design portfolios as well.
I'm looking for something I've never seen before. I think that's one of the main things. Like, I see stuff, and it's kind of like
But do you mean something you've never seen before, but it's something you have seen, just presented like you've never seen it before?
That's well said, Anthony. I'm looking for the Exorcist of character design. No, I'm looking for something unique.
Yeah.
But then, is that person versatile enough? Is that artist versatile enough to try, unique, and is brave enough to try different things? But that's kind of like, in a nutshell, kind of the important thing for me right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. What do you think, Anthony?
I feel like it's kind of similar to what Ricky said. Also, it's also a how do you say this? I have to see that they're thinking through stuff, like thinking through ideas. Maybe it's not a final render or something, but if I can see you're trying so much different things, and I think you could only find out when you're in a class, right? Like if you give homework, the way each person says it in their way, the problem that they need to solve, and you'll tell, oh, this guy's thinking out of the box. To me, no I say no answers is no question is a stupid question, right? Because that stupid question might lead you to another stupid question, which might lead you to something that's cool. Because and I say stupid, it's more like silly, like really being silly and out there with your answer and then reining it back in. That's usually how I design. I design, let's say, with what I think the director wants first, and then I go crazy with the design and put that beside each other and go, oh, I wonder, how does this look like together? And I put something else in the middle, and then I present that. So then they'll see, oh, this is really crazy. Your director or whoever production idea is too boring, and they'll choose the one in the middle. Because it's right beside each other. Sure. I remember I was pushing this design for Thor Ragnarok, Loki's design, that blue suit. I organized all the designs so that I put the yellow, and right after the yellow was the blue, because I wanted the blue to stand out so much. So they're looking at this yellow design, boom, and this blue comes out. It's like they wanted the blue one, but this really
pops,
made them want it. So it's really funny sometimes that you have to plan it that way, so you don't put the best one in the front, like kind of slowly build it for them.
That was for Loki?
It was for Loki, for Thor Ragnarok.
And then you got to meet him, and did you get to like feel out the costume? And
I wish I got to meet him. That'd be cool. I think
I made that joke to Andy, and he didn't think it was funny. That's awesome, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really cool.
For me, I think two things. Normally, as a production designer or visual development, I'm normally focused most of the time on environment and character design. It's more of always most of the time it's a director's call, but Personally, when I'm looking at the character design portfolio, two things. Number one, the first and foremost, they have to be appealing. And for me, I mean, it doesn't matter too much also if it's outside the box thinking, inside the box thinking, as long as they have an
They're
appeal to
thinking.
them, you know. No, actually, it's great that what you mentioned about outside the
Yeah.
box. So I'm also old school. So even if I've seen something before, as long as they're appealing, you know, you can have the bad guy, or you can have, you know, any kind of creatures, as long as they're appealing. You know, when I look at it, it's something good to look at. You know.
Yeah.
Number two is when you know normally you will get a character design portfolio that has a description of describing who the character is, the backstory. The inside has to come out on the outside. It's so hard to explain it, but you feel
Yeah.
it, you know, as
Yeah.
an artist. When you know, the stance, the way they pose the characters, the way, you know, what the expressions that they would create, the sketches.
Hmm.
And I always like it when I can see the description that they gave to the character and it actually comes out
Yeah.
into
In
their
the design.
personality. I think there are two things in a character. You have, just like a real person, you have a character. Everybody has a character and everybody has a personality, and those are two different things. The personality has to stay the same, but the one thing, that's why we call it character arch, because the inside of that person is the one that actually changed, but you don't change the personality. But anyway, so overall,
Yeah.
those are the two things that you know, I like to see.
Armand, I was gonna just add a little to that because
Yeah.
it just hit this note that I realized with the low key design. That's
Mm-hmm.
to put it into words what Armand's talking about. Because Loki in Thor Ragnarok lost his mom, lost his dad, his sisters after him. He's
Mm.
very unstable and very sad inside. So when I did the design, it was asymmetrical to show that
Mm.
instability. And then the cut lines are all diagonal just to have that inside his costume.
Yeah.
And inside the armor, it was purple to symbolize mourning. So I kind of was trying to do that with the design. And that's the one that ended up getting approved, the one you see
Yeah.
on screen.
And see,
Oh, that's
what's
awesome.
awesome for anyone who's watching this, because I didn't know the details behind this. That's the fun and the beauty of concept
Mm.
designing, when you have these ideas and you pitch it to the director and the filmmakers, and they understand what you're trying to do, and then they approve it. And but you're no one's, you know, explaining it when you're watching the movie. You just feel it, or
Mm.
you can see kind of what the design does and how it just, you know, good design is not going to like take you away from the story. Good design actually helps accentuate the story in different ways, and in my opinion, and that's the thing. It's like you don't want it distracting, but you want unique things, but it has to be like a symphony. Like you don't want, like what Armand was saying with music again, you don't want, you know, everyone playing together and all of a sudden a horn goes, you know, because they want to do their own thing.
Yeah.
It's got to kind of work together, you know. But
Yeah.
that was cool to hear about the thinking behind that. And that's another thing is, when you design something in a portfolio, have all your sketches of how you got to that point. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
also helpful as
Mm.
well.
Your variations for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things that you guys are talking about thus far is like no one's talking about like style, and everyone's talking about content, right? Like ideas and content and thoughts and your ideas. And so I think like I get a lot of like questions about like I'm trying to students like trying to find my style
Mhm.
or like stressing out about not finding a style yet.
Yeah.
And I get that and I understand, but like I like that you guys haven't even talked about style. It's really just
Mhm.
about like ideas, the writing, the concepts, and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
style can kind of come and go. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes
Yeah.
with the story too. Depending on the
Mm.
story is your style. Your style is no style. You could do any
Yeah.
style.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Bruce
Yeah,
Lee.
yeah.
Become the cup.
Yeah. But I mean, like it stresses a lot of people out, especially a lot of young artists. I think it stresses them out, and it stressed me out too. I'm just kind of like, what is my style and all that kind of stuff. But I'm always telling people like, I haven't thought about style like in forever. You know, but you jump from project to project, as you guys know, and styles have changed like every 2-3 years anyway. So
Yes, yeah, it's like fashion.
Yeah, can I
go ahead. Yes,
give you? Sorry, my dog. I just texted
I
my
only-
son to pick up the dog because he needs to go out. Um, yeah, you know, maybe we could talk about that because that's a common
yes,
question
it's very
that I get
common.
a lot from the students. Do I need a lot of styles in my portfolio, whether they're environment artists or character designers?
Yep.
For them, versatility means I can do different styles. I can do, um, if I put it in percentage, I can do 70% real, 30% stylized. So I can also do 50% real, 50% stylized. So they will try their best to create different styles in their portfolio. And what happens is there's no truth to them because you're just trying to come up with styles, and now it's a watered down style. I'd rather, think like Kim Jong Ji. He has one style, but he owned it. So I'd rather have you own a style, be good at one style. Then maybe you can venture in another later on, as long as you become a black belt on one style. As opposed to trying to give, yellow belts on different styles. The other one is the versatility for them is, oh, I have to do, and I'm not undermining generalists because there's some studios they need generalists, right? But for me, I'm always up for, even though you can do both, you have to have a specialization because it would bring you more focus to the studio, especially if it's feature animation studios. They will give you a more focus. They will take you in because there's a focus, there's a specialization to it. They need an environment, there's an environment guy. If you say you're both, and for those of you who are watching, always think about this when I mention who says Bruce Lee, that's why it came to my mind. Yeah, so when you say I'm a character, I'm a generalist. I'm both. Now, when someone submits a portfolio and say, I can do both. Okay, beware because you have to make sure that you're black belt on both because you tell me that you're good in character and you're equally good in environment. If you fail one, then my expectation, my expectation I'm disappointed because I was expecting you both on. So I'd rather have a person. So when going back to the style again, if you want to be more versatile in your portfolio, focus on one. Maybe you focus on environment. Then the secondary focus of your portfolio is character design. Oh, by the way, I can also do characters, but you know what you're strong at, and that will give the studios you will make them pay more attention to you.
Yeah.
Because you have a focus. But yeah, the style changes like what you said, and nowadays as I grow older, when I look at the portfolio and it has only one style, and but they're good at it, I knew already that even if I give this person a little bit of a different style, the person can do it, given the amount of time, the amount of the good pay, the amount of time, and good direction, the person can change his style for a project. You would know already based off from a portfolio, the content. So anyway, I just wanna, because that's a really common question. That we always get.
Sorry, really quickly, Armand, that was beautiful. Like Anthony has to dip out because he has to clean his cardboard Marvel cardboards.
Yeah, I have another thing I have to do, another talk thing.
Yeah, of course,
Wow.
of course.
It's
Anthony,
like
Heavy hitters.
Anthony,
had so much fun. We need to do this again. And is everyone in LA? I know Armand is.
I'm
I'm
in the Bay
actually
Area.
outside. I'm outside
I'm in San
LA.
Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, and you're in LA, right, Bobby?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bobby.
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe we could all have like lunch or something.
Yeah, man.
Are you guys all in LA?
Oh, to be fair, this is not the end of the panel. Sorry, Anthony.
It's not the end. This is not the end. It's just me.
And you don't have to sign off, Ricky, unless you want to. Go to bed. Already 7:30.
Don't sign off. Stay here till the end. All
Yeah.
right, you guys. Thank you again so much. I have to
Thank
go.
you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks for having me,
Anthony.
Bobby.
Nice meeting you,
Bye.
Anthony.
All
Nice
right.
meeting you, Ricky.
Bye, Anthony.
See you,
Bye.
man.
I forgot to mention that guy, Dave Bautista, right? He's Filipino, right? In the background.
Mhm.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Ricky, did you have any thoughts on? Yeah, that's a tough one, man, because like
It's a tough one.
diversity versus consistency. But I wanted to say really quick, Ricky, before you start, is like I think what you see, Armand, is like draftsmanship. Like if you see solid draftsmanship, then you know that they can hit another style, even if their portfolio is in one style. That's my thoughts on it. Go ahead, Ricky.
Well, that's it too. There's so many factors. It's again like it's weirdly like listening to music, because there's different genres of music. There's country and opera and rap, hip hop and rock and all that stuff, right? And then, but there's musicians. They have to learn how to play music and play whatever, be good at guitar or piano, or whenever you see a musician that is really good at a lot of different instruments, that's like an incredible thing. But then when you see someone who's just really good at piano and I don't know how to play the guitar, but they understand music, but their style is, it's a very personal thing, because one person I love in terms of style, in terms of music, is Thelonious Monk. He's a jazz pianist, and he just plays like it's wrong notes, quote unquote wrong notes. The thing about Thelonious Monk that I learned when I was first discovered him at Cal Arts, because I didn't know jazz at all. I was listening just to radio stuff, and it's just the way that he seems so free, and that's what got me excited about his type of music.
Yeah.
And the thing about style, it's weird because, I whenever I give talks about this, it's a very subjective thing. There's like a house style, right? There was, there's the DreamWorks style, and there's the Disney style, and there's the Pixar style. And when I was at Pixar, I was actually like, I don't want a house style. I want just quality. I want something different. I want it to be different. And that's when I was pushing at on Up, when I production design Up, I was trying to do something different, because I didn't want the characters to just be like Andy in Toy Story or something.
Yeah.
And, I remember designing Carl Fredrickson in the beginning, and he was very round and he kind of looked like a turtle, And then over time, because I thought about the story when Pete Docter was developing the story with Bob Peterson and Ronnie Del Carmen, I was in the room and we were talking about being boxed in and him being stagnant. And that's the whole dynamic of the square, and that stuff like that happened. So
it's just genius, man.
Well,
genius.
It's a team effort, but it was.
You're the reason why we cried in the first 10.
No, it's not me.
Your fault.
No, the first 5 minutes, actually, just to give credit where credit's due, it's a team effort, absolutely. But Ronnie Del Carmen was the board artist for that. He was the one that he's incredible. He was the one that really, a lot of the films that are very emotional at Pixar, a lot of it is Ronnie's doing. The first 5 minutes of Up, or first 10 minutes of Up, the part where Inside Out, where Joy is down in the memory dumps and thinking about her life and stuff, that's all Ronnie Del Carmen. The stuff in Finding Nemo, where Dory is, in the beginning of the third act, where she's trying to figure out, getting back and forgetting stuff. That's all Ronnie's boards. It's incredible. And so when you see those incredible storyboards and how the story's coming together, as a designer, you get inspired and you start to help support that stuff. But what's interesting as a concept designer in the early stages, there's different seasons of the movie. Armand, you know this, by coming on very early onto a project, there's not a lot of artwork. So there's this thing where you are playing, right? And it's fun, but then it's like it has to hit what the script is telling you. And it's got to hit what the director's needing in their head or what the production designer's needing. And it's like you when it comes down to style, it's not, it's like it kind of comes together and it kind of evolves into that. And so you know, going back to music, I don't know if this makes sense, but it's like if you're making a classical piece and you're like, I want to put in country music and put in banjos and stuff, it's not appropriate. And that was something that was taught to me by Maurice Noble, my mentor. He says, being appropriate to the story you're trying to tell. That's what good design is trying to be appropriate for the story you're trying to tell. Not to say you can't play the banjo well, you're a good musician, but it's not what's needed at this point. And it's the same thing with the square and the circle. If you're needing a circle, don't try to just keep pushing for the square, you know? I don't know, it's like a weird, it's hard because it's art, you know? It's like, there's always gonna be the antithesis of like, well, if you want something different, why not put a banjo in the classical thing? It's gonna be different. And that's the whole dynamic of music, where I've heard that before versus something played very well versus something new and different, but it's not right yet or whatever. And that's why sampling is a weird thing. I know I'm going all over the place, but that's the way my brain works. And sampling is interesting because my daughters are younger and they're like listening to a song and it's a sample of something I grew up with. And, you know, and it's new. It's like, you know, whatever, you know, I don't even know the music now, but I'm like, hey, check this out. This is where it came from, you know? And then I would even go deeper and go, this is who they were inspired by. And it kind of was like, whoa. And that goes back to Armand's thing of like, there's an appeal. There's kind of this, it's just good music. You just kind of know it. It may not be your taste, but you kind of just know it. And I think that's what I think you're touching upon with the portfolios too. It's like with, you know, when you look at portfolios enough, you start seeing kind of whether or not they're able to do something. But really for me, the thing that the cream that rises to the hot top is the ideas. It's all about the way they think. It's how they think. It's like an athlete. They're trained athletes, but it's like, how are they different than someone else? You know, they're all running the 50-yard line fast. And it's not about like who's faster. It's how they use their body. I know that's not a good analogy.
No.
Because it's about it's whoever's fastest wins.
So
But
when you
like
say Armand and Ricky, like it's about the ideas, can we get a little more like micro with it of just kind of like what about the ideas are you looking for? Like, you know what I mean? Of just like it's about the ideas, but like, is it about like you'd said something you'd never seen before, or is it something kind of relatable and that kind of stuff? Because like even me putting together a character design portfolio, I was like, okay, great ideas, but like what about my ideas? Like what do you want to see? You know, like how can I
explain that a little bit clearer? So when I talked about what I was influenced by when I was a kid, you know, I watched a lot of cartoons, I watched a lot of Looney Tunes, but I was really attracted to, you know, what's opera doc. You know, that's like a weird, different version of Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And then I was interested in like Boyhood Days and A to Z and the Ralph Phillips cartoons. I was really like, those ones were amazing to me. Or, you know, the dot and the line was something that I just was blown away with when I saw it the first time. And not to say anything bad about the other stuff that was being done. It was just, that's what I was attracted to. And it's because it was different. I think that's why I liked it. I don't know. I mean, it was just a different style too. And even, you know, the Gene Deitch, Tom and Jerry's, the weirdest ones, those are the weird ones that were like super violent and weird. they scared me as a kid. As a kid, and I don't know, I'm a little kid and I'm watching this stuff and it's like the sound effects were all weird. But
Yeah.
Sheen Deitch is such a unique artist and had a different point of view that as I got older, I was like, oh, I appreciate his work. But when I was a kid, I was super scared of it. So I don't know. Sometimes
Mm.
it's just that kind of gut stuff too. But in terms of style, it's all subjective. It's like
Yeah.
all, and you have to, don't stress out about developing your style because it evolves,
No.
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
evolves through work. It
Yeah.
evolves through time,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful thing that you're on a journey.
Mhm.
It's like I want to be at the finish line now. It's like it's not about the finish line. It's
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
the journey, right?
Mhm.
It's all of our
Mm.
separate journeys. I don't
Mhm.
know. What do you think about what is your take on style, Armand?
Yeah, I think actually you hit a lot of things, and my mind kept going also in different directions every time you hit something. But overall, I mean, it's I think style is we box the word style, but style is something. It's the representation, right, of what's in the inside. Like when you mention about those Looney Tunes, actually, I like Looney Tunes too when I was a kid rather than Disney stuff. I never really watched Disney shorts or what, because for me it's like it's so kiddie-ish, so I like a little bit
Yeah.
more grit, and they're more fun too. The humor in Warner Brothers cartoons are more for a wider range of viewers. But I think that's a good example that whoever is the one creating them or directing them, their style come out
Yeah.
in how they personify the characters. It's the same characters, but they had their take on it. I mean, the personality is the same. That's what I was telling you earlier. Tom and Jerry would always be Tom and Jerry. Whatever the outward personality would be, that will never change. You notice that the character inside of them change depending on whoever's directing them. Like what
Yeah.
you said, they're a little bit more wild. Just like our kids, right? When they were, at least my kids, when they were younger, when someone is sick, he's not the same as the personality is the same, but it becomes more mellow, a little bit more cranky. So it depends again because that's what's happening in the inside, and I think that's a perfect example that in terms of animating or creating a character, a
Yeah.
part of you actually gets translated into that person.
Yeah.
That's why
For sure.
the usual that we see every time an animator. I'm not an animator, but I've seen it enough wherein they will have a voice. The voice character, the voice actor and actress for that character will do their thing, and the animators will watch closely, or sometimes they have to meet the actual voice and watch their movies in the past, so they could actually internalize that. They said that they want to put the voice actor, and they wanted to put what's inside of them into the inside of the characters to have depth. But actually, what I think is happening here is the animator actually is the one extracting the character from the actor, and they digest it.
Yeah.
Then they're the ones who make the characters come to
Come
life.
alive.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's all about
Yeah.
what's the inside. One thing that I've seen also in effective uh, pitching. When you pitch a story, when you pitch a character, whatever, there's always have to be a heavy backstory, even if you don't see it in the film. The writers, the story, the directors, the character designers, even environment. There's always a backstory behind
Yep.
them. I'm building a world right now. It's a made up world. And in order, and we could always say, oh, let's just make it this architecture and mix it with this architecture. It's so easy to do that. But I have to step back and create a lore in a way, even though it wasn't mentioned on the
That's
script.
it.
But that's my task is I have to start the world. So I have to create a lore based off from what I've read on the what has been written. I have to create that, and now I pitch it to directors that the reason why they have this, it's because they have this in the past, and that's it. While you have that, you have a better path to go for, because now you created a highway. And I don't want to say it's easy, but it's much less stressful to navigate in terms of design if you have those at the back of your mind, because you're solid in a foundation why you got this, because it was back here. And same thing with characters. I've seen when pitching new stories and new movies, and how they pitch the characters, I'm always in awe. It's like, wow, I didn't know that they had the parents who just broke up, but you never see that on the film.
Yeah.
But you feel the character. Then once they show the characters, you know who the character is.
Yeah,
and it's
man.
deeper.
So that's why
it's
they
deeper.
behave in
It's
this.
like what you're saying. It's deeper than skin. It's deeper into the character's personality.
Yeah.
You're knowing that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
It's
really.
It's easier said than done, though.
Yeah.
It is
Man,
very.
I tell you, I learned a lot of this through the years from your boss, from John Lasseter, the way he handled things, and even that word appeal. I remember the first time I heard it from him, and he was, I think he was doing a workshop or something, or just maybe one of the talks that he did, and immediately it clicked on me. It's almost like there's that click, a big idea or a scales came off my arms. It's like, wow, that one word was so profound, because I can apply that to pretty much everything from environment to characters, just one word. And there's a lot of things that I've learned, with his leadership in the studio. Yeah.
I mean,
can I add
Yeah, go
something?
ahead, Brady.
Because Armand just reminded me of something that John taught me. Was when I was production designing Up, I actually thought I was going to get fired. I honestly, no, seriously, I thought because I was doing like square-headed old man, like big, head and big chunky. I came up with this term called chunkification and all that stuff.
I remember
CG is an additive art form. It's about like, how real can we get it? And I don't like that word real, because we're trying to make it a believable world, right? An appealing world, but it's animation. If I wanted it real, I'll just go into live action. And then there's this whole thing where I wanted to try to, come up with a style that was like my style. And it brings up a lot. This is over 10 years ago. It brings up this time where I was in an art review with John, and he was talking about appeal and aesthetics and style. And he was talking about 2 Disney movies about dogs. He brought up Lady and the Tramp and 101 Dalmatians. 2 good movies about dogs. But one, Lady and the Tramp, is a little bit more realistic, and 101 Dalmatians is more stylistic. And he was saying that, I remember like yesterday, he goes, Pete, he was talking to Pete Doctor, and I was in the room, and he goes, Pete, you're 101 Dalmatians, I'm more Lady and the Tramp. And you're making your film, so it shouldn't just because you make sure the style supports the story and it doesn't just look cool. And I remember they got into this argument, frankly, about, and that's the beauty of a room. Like they're not, when you argue, you're not trying to do this. You're trying to come up with a compromise. You're trying to come up with a solution. And that, just to be super clear for the people watching, it wasn't an argument as in like, no, this is my thing. And they were talking about style. God, it's coming back to my head.
I love it. I love it. All right, go ahead.
No, it was
geeking out.
No, I'm geeking out too, because I remember now. It was about the dynamic of the style of 100 Dalmatians came from the Xerox technology. Remember that? That's why that style came in. I forget the background designer now. Shoot. It's going for 101 Dalmatians.
Paraguay?
Oh, Paraguay, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was because the technology of Xeroxes came out at that time, and then they Paraguay would do a paint, and then they would offset it. And so the line work would be offset. It was all new. It was all different, right? And they were talking about like how that was neat and cool, but it's like, really, it's about the story. And if you get into Pongo's world, and if you're getting into the, you know, you feel for them and you feel their danger with Cruella and all that stuff. And it was the dynamic of how that worked out. And so when it comes to CG, right, it's a new medium. They were breaking it down. Like, how would it look if it was 2D? How would it look if it's 3D? How would it look if it's claymation? How would it look? Now we're getting the VR and AR. How does that, the dynamic of all this stuff, right? But ultimately it's about caring about the characters, caring about the story. The style comes out of the director's aesthetic a little bit, you know, not a little bit. I mean, Wes Anderson as a director, he has a style for sure. You know, Steven Spielberg has a style. You know, Denis Villeneuve with Dune has a style. There's all these, I mean, Jorge Gutierrez with Maya and the Three. Thank God his style is coming through. That's his style, you know?
Yeah.
But it's evolving because you have, with Jorge is a good friend of mine. You have the, you know, El Tigre stuff that he did in the beginning, and then you have Book of Life, and then now you have Maya and the Three. But his style is consistent to what it is. And it took time for him to develop it. And it actually came from his heritage. He grew up with a lot of interesting things like to look at, and richness of his culture. Same thing with us as Filipinos. And I'll speak for myself because I grew up here in America. I wasn't born in the Philippines, but I love my culture. I love being Filipino. I love the heritage and the things that we do, and it influences how I design. But there's this thing where you have to find universality, and I think universality, that appeal is hard too, Armand and Bobby, because appeal is subjective as well, you know. And I remember, I mean, I'll talk about the logo for Up. I designed a logo for Up, and John didn't like it, you know. And then I kept trying to put it in front of him, and I'll tell you,
wait, right? What was the note?
So the original, it was too John's note. It was too juvenile. So it was an up, the word up, and then what on the U, there was a house pointing up, and then on the P, it was pointing down. The arrow was pointing down.
I think that's really smart.
Well, okay, I'm gonna talk about this because it happened. So I designed this logo for the folders. That's what they said. Ricky, we need instead of just typing up, can you just do a design for the folders so it can look nice? So I was a production designer on it. It's like, sure. So I designed it, and I go, I know this is not just gonna be for the folders. I'm gonna spend my time and make sure it's kind of what I think the movie is, and it's gonna be the logo. So then we had a major screening for the entire company, and Steve Jobs came to it, and they put up my logo on the screen to start the animatic, and at the end there's a guy named Andy Dreyfuss who was hired by Steve Jobs. Andy Dreyfuss actually is a creative director. He helped develop the Pixar logo, and he was hired by Steve Jobs. Andy came up to me at the end of the screening, and he told me, Steve likes the logo. And he thought Andy did it. And I go, thank God Andy said, you know, Ricky Nierva did it. And I was so impressed. I was like, oh, cool, that's awesome.
Dope.
And Pete Docter liked it. But subsequently, John, as the executive producer and the head of the studio, he didn't like it. He said it was too juvenile and it didn't feel like adventure. And he was right. It didn't feel like adventure, but it felt like Pete. And then it ended up being this logo that was, you know, angled like this. And it was, you know, it's like a more dynamic logo. And it was developed by the Disney department. So Disney has an entire graphics department that does like the titles, you know.
Yeah.
It's like a whole big machine.
Yeah, I got it.
And there was tons of stuff. But
Yeah.
ultimately, someone has to choose. And, you know, it ended up being what it is. But it's this thing where a lot of it is a function of, you know, the aesthetic of the people in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to just kind of go with that. Because you know what's interesting, Armand? I'm excited about what Skydance is going to do, because the first official John thing right now with the John time is Blush. And I know you're going to be interviewing Joe Mateo. And that's incredible because there's Skydance Animation is coming out with their new stuff. And, you know, it's like, it's interesting because choices are being made by the executives and the people involved. And it ultimately will be a house style. And I remember working at Netflix, they're like, well, there's no house style for Netflix because we're brand new, you know? So it's kind of interesting because it's the first stuff. I'm interested. I'm super interested in what you guys are going to be doing. Because there's some amazing artists at Skydance right now. And Blush is incredible, but I was like watching it and studying the crap out of it, you know, because, and I love that there's all this, you gotta, if whoever's on this webinar, you gotta check out Joe's talk because he talks about the influence of the Philippines a little bit, and it's very subtle, it's very subtle, but it's, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place.
No. It's okay.
That's the way my brain works.
Yo, I mean, that was great. I mean, I always tell like people that are building their portfolios, character design, environment wise or otherwise, of just kind of like, you know, styles will kind of come and go. And then also when you get into the industry, you're going to be jumping from style to style like every 2 to 3 years anyway, right? That's a realistic bit. Like you break into the industry, you work on one show, and then you work on another show, it's completely different style. Work on one show, it's completely different style.
But see,
right?
but Nicola Marley, let's use him as an example. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
he's got a style. Everyone knows the Nicola Marley style. And then the thing is that I see when people are trying to do Nicola Marley, I'm like, I'm just gonna go to Nico, you know? So it's kind of, I don't know.
That's a good point too. That's a good point too. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, actually
well, yo, listen, this is coming from someone that like worshiped Nico forever.
Oh, me too.
Forever and ever. And the way that I try to break out of that was just kind of like when I tell people now, like in Rise of Animation reviews, it's like, don't worry about style. Just worry about like what you said, Ricky, and what you said, Armand, about like character and story. And just everything else will kind of like, that will kind of dictate the style that you draw in, right? But don't worry about style right now because it's fleeting, and also kind of like, who cares? Who cares about the style? But the most important thing is the character stuff and the story stuff. That's the most important thing. Even if even in the character design portfolio, you know, even if you're not a story artist, like even in the character design portfolio, like don't worry about your style. I mean, I don't have a style, and Ricky and Armand, the thing that I admired about you both is like you don't settle on one specific style. You're very fluid, and when I look at your work, it doesn't seem like Nico, if you're here, hi Nico, like you're very obsessed with style, but like for whatever reason, like Ricky, I feel like you don't give it a butt.
I don't.
I
try not to.
You're not concerned with that.
I'm just trying to let it come out. I'm trying to play the piano like Thelonious Monk. I'm trying to like Picasso. Like it looks like he doesn't give a shit, but it's like he's really thinking it through, you know? And I remember learning about Picasso. Sorry, I remember this one artist who was a classically trained artist. He's like, oh, he's bullshit. You know, Picasso's bullshit. And because he doesn't know how to draw. And I remember that. No, it hit me. I'm like, oh my God. And then I looked at his early stuff. Picasso knew how to life draw. He actually was classically trained, but he chose to evolved his style, just like the Beatles evolved their styles from, you know, Love Me Do to, Sergeant Pepper, whatever. I'm sorry,
No,
but
it's
it's
okay.
just this thing where it evolves. That's why I love Armand. The fact that Armand is a musician is so legit to his talent, because the whole thing is, it's all the same. And I learned too from musicians, it's math. And I'm like, I'm horrible at math, you know? And it's like, but it's this thing where that's what I love about art. It is math. When he was talking, Armand was talking about chemistry, it is chemistry. It's like everything. But then I'm trying as an artist to break it and to come feel like I don't give a shit. But I really cared so deeply. And every little line, like, I'm tortured. I like draw and then I'm like, oh, that's horrible. And
I will say,
oh, that's horrible.
I will say really, really quickly of like, we talked about a little bit about like how students putting together their portfolios can kind of like make something different and kind of stand out. The advice that I always give in Rise Up is just kind of like, tell your stories. I mean, like, tell your personal stories, tell stories that come from your culture, tell stories that you experienced, even if they're not like epic. I mean, like, even if they're mundane, tell those stories and put them in and that can apply to a character design portfolio or story portfolio or prop design portfolio or anything like that. I mean, just kind of like be upfront about who you are, and the culture that you come from. And it's on brand with Rise Up Animation, right? Of just kind of like representing your culture and where you kind of come from and celebrate that, and I think people, I think people don't do it often because they just hadn't seen it before. I mean, like, like Trinidad and Tobago or like Philippines or like anything like that. They hadn't seen anything like that before in portfolios or in movies. So they don't know that it's right or appropriate to fill their portfolio with those kinds of stories and those kinds of characters and those kinds of anything like that. So, we're here to tell you that, like, wherever in the world that you're from, whether it's, like Puerto Rico or Cuba or Philippines or anything like that, your stories are valid. Tell those stories. And that's the way that your portfolio will stand out 100%. I mean, like, I say this all the time, like that, studios don't want to see another Frozen again, right? But people in LA and people in the animation industry are really interested in learning about different cultures, I think, from the people that I met. And you represent that. You represent where you're from, the city you're from, the culture you're from, tell your stories, your folklore and all that kind of stuff. Bring it. People want to know about it, and now's a good practice, because later on down the line, you might be a story runner or head of story or director later. Get used to telling your stories and representing who you are as a person or as a culture, Filipinos anywhere, get used to it. So like LA is ready for it. They're primed for it. This is like the best time to do it now, but man, you don't have to be pitching to your studio. You can do it in your portfolio now. Tell your stories now. So that's, I mean, going back to what you guys said, of just kind of like how you can stand out. You can stand out by being you, or you can stand out by, telling your like personal stories and only things that you can tell. Yeah.
Amen.
That's good. That's good.
I'm gonna pass out.
And just make sure all of your artwork looks
kidding.
like The
Sorry.
Exorcist. That's it. Just make sure all of your artwork looks like The Exorcist. That was hilarious.
Yeah, that was something that you wouldn't expect. Probably the best answer so far in my years of in the industry. What inspired you to go into animation? The Exorcist while eating.
While
It's like,
eating.
it's like what inspired you? What do you call it? The guy in the guy who checked the dead. the medical examiner, right? You know,
Oh,
so
and
there's a
autopsy.
the autopsy, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, you know, whenever I watch, look at the dead people, and I'm eating burger, you know, so that
You
was.
guys, do you mind if we move on to live Q&A?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
I'll probably be signing out by 8:30.
8:30. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Angelo in the building. Come on.
Sorry,
It's a process.
guys, I didn't mean to. My wife just texted me. And said, "Don't look down. It looks bad." You know, it's as if you're not listening. And I said, "I'm actually listening. I'm just answering some of the questions." And I didn't know, Bobby, if I thought it was Icon Manila and I'm answering the questions. But you can still ask the same questions if you need it to be discussed.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Angelo,
sorry about
are
that.
you? No, dude, Armand, we didn't even realize. Me and Ricky are too busy looking at each other because we love each other, and so we didn't even realize that you were looking down. Angelo, hi, Angelo. Do you want to come on the video or what's going
Yeah,
on?
pop in. If you have a camera.
Hey, where are you
Hey,
coming from,
come on.
Angelo?
Oh,
Where are you coming from?
I'm from Bataan, Philippines.
Ah, nice.
Oh, Bataan. Yeah, we're in Bataan.
Awesome.
In Orion.
Got it.
Okay.
Got
I
it.
used to go there.
What is your question, Angelo? What do you think?
Again, sir.
Oh, sorry. What is your question? Like, what do you want to
My
ask?
question is, I have actually typed a while ago. My question is, what is the importance as an artist of considering novelty as you create your own design or own character?
What is the importance of considering novelty as an artist? As an artist creates his or her own character, design a
You take
character.
that,
Well,
Armand and Ricky.
novelty.
What
Um,
like novelty? Like
Uniqueness.
oh, uniqueness. Okay.
oh, uniqueness. Yeah, they're important. Okay, so I remember when I was working on Lilo and Stitch long time ago. Um,
Sorry. Can we
I
just
was
geek
able
out
to.
over Lilo and Stitch? I mean, like, like every panel, like someone drops like movie names, and we're like, Lilo and Stitch, cool. But like, I'm like, yo, I love that movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, good. So I think that will be your childhood, guys. That's how young I am. So when I was working on it, I mean, it's something close to me because it's Hawaiian culture, and you know, in Hawaii there's a lot of Filipinos, and it's the island, so I know the foliage, I know the vegetation. I have a lot of things that who would have thought that those things that I grew up with, eventually I'll be able to extract. If I say novelty, what are the novelties there? You know, so there was one scene in Lilo and Stitch wherein it's Christmas time. It's towards the end, and I can see the door was open, and I said that's kind of like a negative space back there. You know, it would be interesting if something's right there. So I say, oh, I'm gonna put a parole because if you go to Hawaii, there's a lot of Filipinos, and who knows, maybe Lilo and Stitch, their grandma came from Ilocos Norte, so you know they would have Filipino culture inside of them, so they would put a parole in there. So I put a parole, and it worked. You know, so that's a novelty. You know, it's important. It's part of our culture, which is actually authentic in Hawaii. You know, vegetation, things that I'm so familiar with. I don't know what they're called. You know, what kind of plant that would be, but I would just draw them naturally in there. I don't know what they are, what they're called, but I know what they look like because we have them in our home. I've seen my mom loves plants, so I would draw them. And immediately they work, you know, no questions asked because in Hawaii they have the same vegetation as well. So I think in that regard, I don't know exactly what's your novelty question, but for me, creating those environment, there's a lot of, I would consider, mundane or menial things around me that, oh, I was able to use them because that's part of the authenticity of the place. So they didn't ask that from me, things that naturally I would just bring out because I'm so familiar with the location of the films.
And can I add something in terms of, Angelo, if you're talking about character designs and using a novelty or something that's unique, that's always good if it's appropriate for the story that that character's in, right? So if every little thing on that character matters. If the character has a backpack, right? What kind of backpack is that character going to be carrying? And if you look at different backpacks, I'm just throwing it out there. There's Jansport, and there's, Fjallraven, and then there's kinds with spikes on the back that looks like, Nintendo Koopa Shell or something. There's all different kinds. And it's like, you have to think as a designer, why are they wearing that backpack, right? Why did they choose that one? Or what does that tell you about the character? Same thing with the colors. Anthony was talking about the colors he used, the blue and all that stuff, and it's the why. So if it's unique, that's great. But if it's unique in a way that's distracting, that's not so great, because there's more questions about what that is than, every little thing matters. Like the mask you're wearing, if you had, Guardians of the Galaxy print on it versus just that blue, that instantly tells you some information. Like, do you like Guardians of the Galaxy? Is that your favorite thing? Or is it, just like stuff like that. So any little information you put does matter. So if uniqueness is good, it just has to be thought out. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. I have received such an amazing answer. Sets of answer from you, from the stunning artists.
Angelo, really quickly, sorry, before you ask your next question, are you on your way to catch an Uber? Like, you look like you're waiting at the entrance of your apartment. Are you gonna, where are you going? You going to your job?
I'm actually in the school.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on.
I'm actually a public school teacher, but here in the Philippines, the students are not yet allowed to be entering the school.
Oh, I see.
We are just scheduled this Friday. Different teachers were scheduled in different days, so it's our schedule today. So I really wanted to join this because I believe that this will be a great learning for me to be. It's actually a rare opportunity to be hearing the words of wisdom coming from stunning artists like you.
No, not me.
Well, you know what? I'm always learning. I'm always a student. I'm always learning still too, as well. So.
Hey, Bobby, excuse me, sorry. I'm gonna be signing off. My my daughter needs some help here. So
no problem.
Again, it's so good to be in this group. Thank you, Bobby, for the invite. Ricky, it's good to see you again. Hopefully, after all this craziness, we'll be able to hang out again and do some fun stuff.
Awesome.
Let's go meet in Palawan.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
When Philippines opens up, so I think they're starting to ease up down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
No well, Armand, it's good to see you. I can't wait to see what you're working on, man.
Oh, thank you, man. It's good to see you guys and have fun. And Angelo, thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, see you guys.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Oh, Ricky, bye, Armand. Ricky, you're gonna go? See him?
Well, you know what? I can do a few more questions.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm getting texted too.
Oh, you are? Oh, from your family? Angelo, that's great. I was
But
gonna
Mike-
say, Angelo, so you're a teacher? What are you teaching?
I'm actually teaching physics and contemporary arts.
Really think about any of those things? Physics and contemporary arts?
But I actually, sir, it's a nice thing that being into painting is an outlet for me to not be prone to, during these days, there are cases of anxiety and depression, but painting has helped me a lot because it's therapeutic
Oh, that's great.
and it's kind of moving me away from a sense of being depressed. So
Good.
actually, art is very, very good for the mental health of, of individuals who are pursuing it.
That's great, Angelo. And anyone out there that if it helps with your mental health and all that stuff, then it's such a positive thing. And that's the
Yes,
beauty of art. That's the
Yes,
power
sir.
of art. Yeah.
And you know, it's kind of elevating the spirit of an artist, especially when you have done something that you haven't done in the past. Like related to my question, if you have created something novel, you think it's novel because you haven't seen it in Google or any resources where you can get concepts. So it's rewarding, it's refreshing that you have done something new as an artist. And it's the
Sure.
beauty of being an artist, always striving for what is new.
Yeah, correct. Right, right, right. Yeah.
Should we go to
I
the
mean,
next question? Thanks,
Yeah.
Angelo, for your question. Take care.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Sal, what up?
Hi, y'all.
Hey,
Peace
what's going
out.
on?
Hello. I wanted to ask, what are some of the things that you guys love to see in a portfolio, whether it's like orthographic views or studies or of like plants or anything like that?
So, you know,
Maybe take it away.
that's the question of the night. I'm noticing that that's a great question. And I'm seeing that a lot of people are like, what are you looking at for portfolios? And we touched upon, you know, the ideas, but if you want to talk about the nuts and bolts in portfolios, for me, I like seeing life drawing. Life drawing is a foundation of, you know, whether you can draw. I mean, look, there's animal drawings, but life drawings are important because we're humans ourselves and we know if something's off, you know, like that neck is too long or those, you know, the anatomy is a little off. It's just a great practice to see whether or not that person has an ability to draw. You don't have to make it a chock full of life drawing, but I like to see life drawing. I like to see cafe drawings. I like to see drawings of outside with your sketchbook and your way you think and observe. I want to see how you see. And then just like Armand was saying, really cater the portfolio to what you want to do. And what I mean by that, it's like, if you want to be a set designer, you know, an environment artist, for example, make sure you have environment drawings, of course, designs and things like that. If you want to be a character designer, make sure you have character designs. I can't emphasize that enough. A lot of people, they just want to get in the industry. And I do that, I do the quotes because they just want to get in. And it's like, we're looking for character designers. And then I'm looking at a portfolio and I'm like, wow, this is all environment designs. And there's like one page of character designs. So it's like, you know, cater it that way. And then also just your personal work. I like to see personal work because it's your point of view. You work in a studio, there's going to be a certain thing you're going to be working on. But then what Bobby was talking about your personal take, you know, that could be very valuable to how we make the film better or the product better. So those are kind of the specific things that I like to see in portfolios. I don't know. I hope that answered your question. Oh, I can't hear you, man. You're muted.
Oh yeah, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Where are you calling out
Appreciate
of,
it,
Sal?
Burbank.
Awesome. Cool. Well, good
Thanks,
luck,
guys.
man.
Thank you.
Adrian, how you feeling?
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, Adrian.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Bobby. Bobby, I don't know if you remember me, but Love the opportunity to get to chat with both of you, by the way. Just, yeah, tremendous respect for what you've done for the industry and everything that you've accomplished thus far. I think I have a burning question. Like, I think I've wanted to ask this question for a long time, but I think most of you have spoken a little bit about this in your experience. You know, the being shy to reach out and to ask, particularly, you know, to figure out how to reach out to people in the industry. So particularly me, my question is, being somebody who actually is trying to follow their dreams, coming from Manila, making it all the way here. I'm currently in Atlanta right now because I graduated recently from SCAD, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, how I can contribute. So my question is, sorry, that was a little long-winded there. No. How do I get in touch with with a wider Filipino and Filipino-American animation community to help contribute to telling stories around our culture? Because I think a lot of people are probably in the same space as me right now. They're wanting to do that. Either they're thinking about trying to, you know, start anew here or somewhere else to be able to work on these projects. And I'm seeing a lot of them are starting to, you know, you guys are building on it. It's amazing to see them come out, and for us to be able to contribute to these projects would be amazing, an amazing experience and opportunity. And it's precisely what we came out here to try to pursue, our dream, our passion to tell our stories. How do we do that? What's the best way for us to get to do that? To
Adrian,
Sorry.
Adrian, you're doing it. You're on Rise Up Animation's webinar. You're telling us your story, and you know, Rise Up Animation, kudos to Bobby and his crew, but it's this it's this thing that, you know, this is a new thing. Rise Up Animation is incredible. It's a great place to, you know, show the representation of all the different cultures, and people have so many different stories to tell. And this community that Bobby and you know, I want to give everyone credit.
You can say team.
Yeah, the team. I know. I'm like blanking out on Kato's
Bobby and the band.
So, yeah, but it's one of these things. Sorry, but Adrian, it's just, you're at the cusp of it. It's starting to happen, and I don't know if you're wanting to. You know, you're in Atlanta, but the industry is in LA. But then because of COVID and the way it works, it's really a global thing now. Like, I'm working with a company in London right now, and it's a great thing to you know, network that way because of Zoom and stuff like that. But I don't know, you know, Bobby, what do you think? What's a way to get in touch with the wider audience?
Yeah. Adrian, I think, like, tried and true of just like social media. I mean, like, that's kind of like how people get recognized, you know. Like, every time like we're staffing up in Disney, it's like right away to social media, right away to IG, right away to ArtStation. So like, I mean, now more than ever, I mean, it's different than when me and Ricky kind of came out, because you had to like send stuff out and all that kind of stuff. But like now, I mean, just be cognizant of like the importance of like updating a ton, you know, especially if we're trying to break into the industry. I mean, like, you know, later on, you don't have to do this a ton necessarily, but like, man, when you're trying to break in, I mean, it behooves anyone to update constantly, you know, and just kind of be a force on social media, right? And, you know, there's a lot of things that benefit you for that, of like, not only kind of like the visibility, but also just kind of like when you're kind of like putting yourself into a place where you're like, I'm gonna update social media, my social media, IG, Twitter, whatever, every week or like every 2 weeks, it holds you accountable. And it's you're kind of putting your stuff out there, and you're kind of marketing yourself, right? I mean, like, even for me now, I mean, like, I've worked as a character animator and a designer before, but like, yo, I'm trying to change the game a little bit of just kind of like what does the industry see me as? And what I want the industry to see me as is kind of like a idea generator, showrunner, director, or whatever. So you kind of put that kind of stuff out there on social media that you would want the industry to see you as, so, not every post is going to be fantastic, and it's okay, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it is. Hey, you know what? I'm sorry for jumping in. 8:30 was my out.
Okay, you're out of here.
8:30 now, but
okay, cool.
I can do one more if because people have been waiting. I don't want to.
Okay, cool.
Adrian, I hope that answered your question a little bit.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ricky and Bobby. Thank you for your input. I'll probably try to reach out to you guys, and I don't know, at some point I just feel like I should, now that we're on it. But yeah, thank you so much.
Adrian, be bold. Be bold. Be brave.
Be bold. Be great. And that's to everybody. Be bold. Be great.
Yeah.
That's Ricky's MO. Be bold. Be great. Ricky, Rena, do you want to come on board? Or maybe.
Are you there, Rena?
Rena?
Oh, sir.
Hi. You want to ask?
I'm just actually I'm actually a little curious, sir. As someone, I grew up watching cartoons and animations, and I was exposed to Western American animation, and then my older years, it's Japanese animations. So may I ask you, sir, what's your opinion as animators about Japanese animations, sir? That's all.
Oh, I love anime. I'm a huge fan of Studio Ghibli's work. I was lucky enough to go there and visit them and see how they work. And there's just so much amazing artwork that's coming out of different parts of the world. So I'm a huge fan of Japanese animation. And it's influencing Western animation. I think, and I'll use an example, Red, Turning Red out of Pixar, directed by Domichi. There's a lot of influence of like kind of an anime influence, a style influence. What do you think, Bobby?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I love anime. I haven't watched a ton of it, but like I'm working on something now. And like anything that could be anime, I think is hilarious because like, I think the thing about it is just kind of like from scene to scene, everything is so exaggerated. You know what I mean? And then everything is like pumped up to like a 10. So like, I'm like, yo, I'm into this.
What's funny, Bobby, talking about style, when I grew up, I didn't see a lot of anime, but I did. I was watching Gatchaman. I was watching Mazinger Z. I was watching, all this stuff that was different from the Looney Tunes, right? Which is Western. And then I remember watching Akira, and Akira just blowing my mind the first time I saw it,
Oh.
And then in finding out about, Miyazaki's work and Studio Ghibli's work, and that's totally different.
Yeah.
And to see how there's different styles, but then it's still in that, genre of
ether
anime. So anyway,
no,
I love it.
That's wonderful. Yeah. We're pulling from anime all the time. And I think what I pull from anime is just kind of like I think like the stillness of the shots. When you cut to a shot versus Disney animation or whatever, everything is like, there's kind of like a lot of movement and that kind of stuff. But like in anime, when you cut to a shot, it's just kind of like an emotion. You hang on that emotion, and then you kind of like milk that. I don't know. There's something about it that is very appealing and very efficient for like TV animation. So I think TV animation, like you'll see more and more. There's a lot of younger creators that are like influenced by anime.
Yeah,
for sure.
that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's smart. It's very smart.
I hope that answered your question. Reina, is that how you
Reina?
say your name?
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yes, thank you, sir. That answered my question,
no
sir.
problem.
Okay.
No problem.
I'm sorry, I have to.
Yeah, we're gonna peace out. Thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Amazing. And yeah.
Bobby, I appreciate you for introducing us to Rise Up Animation and having us today. And it's an honor and total privilege to be part of this amazing group. And I hope people got a lot of good information out of this. And you know, I love animation and I love sharing because I love animation. I know that the future is in the hands of the younger generation, and you know, I want to make sure that that this next generation takes good care of it, and it's like comes up with amazing stuff, and I can see it happening. So I'm super excited about that.
Don't look at me, I'm sobbing. Yeah.
I can't wait to see what you do too, Bobby. It's going to be exciting.
That's awesome, man. Ricky, this is the man that made us cry for the first 15 minutes of Up. And also Bahay Kubo's in Finding Nemo. I'm surprised you didn't mention that, but I will mention it now. This guy's Ricky is one of my heroes. I look up to him. He's my godfather.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
All right, everyone. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.